You said young man sport, and why are there not more women in esports? And you can punt on this question if you don't want to answer it.
No, I think that there's I think that everybody looking for the smoking gun is looking at a system, right? And the system involves a lot of different factors then you're not going to solve it with one solution, right? It's going to be a concerted effort. So for one thing, there's just fewer women who are going to try, uh, based on like physical gender differences, which you find in the average population, and the extremes. When you go to the extreme levels, these statistical anomalies are like much more flagrant, right? They're just they accent the edges of the outliers like much more. You see that in terms of violence and in terms of like competitiveness and in a lot of other things that are driven by testosterone levels, to be honest. But that doesn't mean that there are not a number of like women who are capable of playing just as well and better than all of the men out there. There's just a smaller number of them overall, let's say in the general population. And part of that is due to the difference in gender, right? But I would say most of that is due with the fact that a disproportionate number of men play the games that are esports compared to women who play the games that are esports. And that's not to say that women don't play games. It's just that they're playing different games right now. And that's due to a lot of different factors. These numbers are taken globally. And if you look at globally at the plight of women worldwide, like the difference in leisure time starts differentiating between the genders as early as age 4. So as early as age 4, women have less leisure time than men. Girls have less leisure time than boys, because of their gender, because of expectations that are placed upon them in terms of like housework and social responsibilities. So that leisure time starts cutting into all leisure activities. It's why, historically leisure has been kind of like a thing that males have defined as a hobby industry. So for one, women are playing games that are just more mobile and that you can do anywhere, because they don't have time to sit down for these larger swaths of hours. And I'm generalizing here. When I say they don't have time to sit down, what I mean is that in larger numbers, men are sitting down for large swaths of hours and playing these complex computer games, and women in larger numbers are playing mobile pick up anywhere and put down immediately because I need to do something else games, because of this leisure time discrepancy. So that contributes to the statistical anomaly. Then you start to enter into the actual barriers, right? And most of these, I was reading an interesting study on gender differences in political participation that was saying that women, essentially, if you look at the like stock market, for example, you can find that clearly women are better estimators of risk. They're the top performers in terms of stock picking. By a clear margin, women are like fundamentally better at assessing risk in equities than men. And so they say this has to be a gender difference, and it turns out that it is. And so the way that this plays out in the political arena is women are are more accurate at assessing the risk of winning or losing a political campaign, and they're less likely to take campaigns that they're not going to win. Whereas a man will more likely say like, oh yeah, like just have blind faith that they're going to win, even if there's a 70% chance for the incumbent or like a 99% chance for the incumbent. There's like, no, we got to try, throw themselves at the wall and waste their time. And women are more likely to, for a number of reasons, both this gender difference in terms of risk assessment and also just like because women have less opportunities, so they need to pay attention more to the ones that they do take. This is a statistical thing again. I'm not saying that like all women have less opportunities. I'm saying that in general, right. They're more keen about the ones that they do take. And so they're just less likely to be like, I'm going to spend 8 months of my life and thousands of dollars running a political campaign that is destined to failure for sure, based on this clear risk assessment. So when you look at professional esport, what do you see? You see 100% male participation, 0 female, and you think this is not a risk that I'm willing to sink 3 years of my life trying to be a pro into, because I can assess that risk and say that I'd rather do something else with my time. So I think that's going on. And I think that that's backed up by gender different studies in other realms that could be applied to this. And then there's the whole recruiting thing, right? Talent scouting. So there was a study in Germany where they put where they had all male orchestras, and they were like, well, men are just better at instruments. It's not a recruitment thing. And so they were like, okay, so you won't mind if we put women behind curtains and men behind curtains when they apply for your orchestras. And the conductor said no. And then magically 6 months later, there was like a 50-50 gender differential in top performers in orchestras. So it turns out they were just hiring men because they saw men, and then they just heard better music when they saw them. But when you put them all behind curtains, they would pick the woman half the time. So I think that there's like a scouting problem here. Esports going to overcome this almost instantly once we get women into gaming houses, or once gaming houses die and we start having training facilities, because the ladder is blind, right? There's no selection till you get to the top. Like, nobody cares whether you're a female or a male when you're in an online avatar. It's irrelevant. And so we have a ton of tools to deal with that problem, all the way up until the pro team. And I think the pro teams will solve it almost instantly once we don't all live together in the same house as a way of competing.
Yeah, I mean that's another interesting topic altogether. I feel like I should shout out Giguri right now in Overwatch. She is an incredible off tank, and I love watching her play. Do you think we will see in the future men and women leagues in these sports, or
I think that would be a real shame, because I think that esports has a very powerful opportunity to stand up in society and be a gender blind competitive arena where men and women can, for the first time, go against each other on like an equal turf that is impossible to do on the running field. It's impossible to do on the tennis field. Like, it's just impossible to do because of the discrepancy of testosterone. And I feel like esports has the capability of being this beautiful societal evolution where we go into having our very first like massive like sport competitive arena, which is gender blind and even disability blind in a way. Like, you don't have legs, no problem. So I think it would be much more awesome for humanity if we just let it play out, and we just let more and more women kind of make the attempt, and we just got more and more representation over time, and we solved some of these problems a little bit as we could, and we let the rest of them play out as we, evolved esport, and then it just became this amalgamated genderless sport. That'd be sweet.